Let's have a chat with our panel. Carrie Sheffield, Conservative commentator, and Kelly Hyman, Democratic strategist and lawyer. Kelly Hyman, to you first. We began the year obviously hearing a lot about ISIS tactics, particularly in Minnesota, leading to the death of 2 individuals there. Since then, there was a promise from the administration, a change of personnel to do things in a different way. But yet these incidents do still seem to be occurring every few weeks. What's your view on what's happening in Texas?
There needs to be transparency. This needs to be investigated, and there needs to be justice. I think it's really important that there is transparency so we know exactly what happened. It's been reported that what happened was that the ICE cars were unmarked with masks, and his son has stated that maybe his father thought they were robbers. So I think it's really important that we know exactly what happened, so hopefully that this will never happen again.
And Carrie, to you, we had seen a change in tactics from President Trump and the administration. Obviously, the overall ethos is very core to what this administration ran on and what it has promised to the American people. But have we seen that change in tactics?
Well, after we saw what happened in Minnesota, President Trump was swift to make leadership changes, not only specifically for immigration enforcement, but also at the overall Department of Homeland Security. And so that's something that I think we can acknowledge here, that yes, these tactics have been modified. There's been leadership change, but also when you're talking about the effectiveness of this, just the White House posted today, there have been 0 releases at the border for 13 straight months, and that is remarkable when you're talking about his predecessor, who was allowing tens of millions of illegal immigrants to come across our border. And that, as you mentioned, is one of the top reasons why he was swept to victory in 2024.
But Carrie, is this an appropriate use of force? Because many people say you can have the clampdown, you can target people, but it's not appropriate if people are being killed in the process.
Well, I agree with my co-panelists that we need justice. We need a comprehensive and independent investigation. Absolutely. We need justice for the life that was lost. But from the initial reports, it does seem that this individual who died, that he was weaponizing his vehicle and was a threat to the officers. We'll find out more details about whether that's true or not. But the same thing, we saw the pattern again in Minnesota, where individuals who died, they were engaging in weaponizing, whether it was a vehicle or potentially other matters or other items that could have resulted in the death of ICE officers. And the other thing is that when you're talking about...
that's been debated, hasn't it, Carrie? But we'll discuss this in a bit more detail with both you and Kelly, because we do want to take you to Texas now and get more on the story from Houston. Julian Aguiar is an immigration reporter for the Houston Chronicle. Thanks for joining us here on The Context USA. Just tell us more about what we know and what's happening on the ground. We saw that there were demonstrations, of course, the family and local Democratic politicians and activists calling for an independent investigation as well.
That's correct. There's a handful of the congressional delegation, all Democrats, that asked the Department of Homeland Security yesterday to ensure that they will preserve evidence and they will keep them abreast of any independent investigation. At the same time that they're demanding this independent investigation, however, they're also casting doubts on whether that will really happen. They raised the Minnesota example as an example of just how, I guess, in their words, secretive or non-cooperative immigration and customs enforcement and other federal officials are in this investigation. So that's what Democrats are urging right now. Again, they want a full, transparent investigation, but what that looks like is really, really unclear, given their sort of the doubts that they've cast on whether the Trump administration will be fully transparent. On the ground, in the neighborhood, it's a very sad and intense scene. As your previous panelist said, there are a lot of questions still to be answered. Somebody lost their life, and people want answers on why this person was targeted, whether it was a targeted enforcement. From every family member, even lawmakers that have done the research, they said that, Mr. Salgado did not have a criminal record. And they say that, targeting people without criminal records whose only infraction is an immigration infraction does not keep in line with the Trump administration's, promise to go after the worst of the worst. As a matter of fact, in the first full year of the Trump administration, in Texas, ICE agents arrested more people with only civil immigration infractions than they did immigrants with pending criminal charges or criminal convictions. So everybody's just kind of asking, like, what happens is zeroing in on the worst of the worst.
Yeah, I mean, you've done quite a lot of reporting on this, haven't you? And you've also spent time with immigration enforcement officers at the border as well. What's the broader picture then in Texas and perhaps across the US? Because we've not talked about immigration raids as much. There's a lot of international politics that dominates, I should say, the White House agenda. But of course, raids are continuing, aren't they?
Yeah, of course. I mean, Tuesday was a perfect example. We saw last week that across the country, Immigration and Customs Enforcement arrested, I think, upwards of 10,000 people in a 5 or 7 day operation, which means, I think after the publicity, the negative publicity the administration got in the shootings in Minnesota of American citizens, that people thought that ICE would, take a different tack. But we're seeing that they're ramping up. I don't think it's getting as much publicity as those did, but obviously with what happened Tuesday here in Houston, Mr. Salgado's death, I think there's going to be more attention paid to that. Okay. So, the administration says, we're targeting these people. They're in the country illegally. If you're here legally, you have nothing to worry about. But again, going back to what I said earlier about, prioritizing the worst and the worst, a lot of people say that's not happening. They're rounding up whomever they can, to pad the statistics and to make good on the president's promise on the campaign trail, saying that they're going to launch the most massive deportation campaign in history. And to do that, you have to cast a wider net. So people are really scratching their heads. And a lot of immigration attorneys that I talked to, they have clients in detention that were detained when they went to present themselves during a routine check-in with federal enforcement, with federal immigration officials. So they're saying that is low-hanging fruit, and they're just getting whoever they can to pad their statistics without really focusing on the worst of the worst. With respect to what happened Tuesday, there are still a lot of questions that remain unanswered. Where is the agent? Where are these folks? Where is the investigation? Why hasn't ICE released any more details about exactly what happened, and sort of leaving people to make up their own minds without all the facts being present?
Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us, Julian Aguiar, an immigration reporter for the Houston Chronicle. And Caitriona, it's interesting because Julian, of course, talking about the fact that unlike some other cases, there's no video footage that's been released, has there?
Indeed. Let's bring our panel back in here, Carrie Sheffield and Kelly Hyman. And Kelly, Julian raised the issue of detention as well, because that is the other point that has become quite controversial over the last few months in terms of who is being detained in various centres and the conditions that they're being kept in and how they are being intercepted as well. Do we know enough about what's going on? Is there enough transparency there?
There can always be more transparency, because that way you ensure that everyone knows what's going on. But it's been reported that since 2025, over 12 people have died in the ISIS detention centers. So it's important to find out what exactly happened, what exactly is going on, what are these conditions like. It's been reported that there's some issues with the conditions and the way in which people have been getting food and being treated. And so I think it's really important to look into this and find out what exactly is going on. And there's full transparency in order for there to be accountability, because that's really important.
Carrie, do you see a way in this country anytime soon for people who are here without the correct papers, illegally undocumented, whatever label you want to use, but who are, trying to raise their families and earn a living here, that they can regularise the situation, that there could be bipartisan agreement on some sort of reform law for that? Do you see that happening?
Well, I think, I can only speak for myself, but as a conservative activist, I have a lot of conservative friends. I have a lot of friends on the other side of the aisle as well. I think for conservatives, the question of basically rewarding bad behavior and the fundamental unfairness, especially among a lot of Latinos who do it the right way. They follow all the rules. They're actually really upset about the idea that people would be rewarded for trying to cut in front of the line. And so this idea of fairness and justice, that needs to be addressed if we are going to talk about the type of system. But the individual who died, again, his death was tragic. And I do hope that we'll be able to figure out the circumstances of his death and figure out how to prevent these types of deaths. But from what I understand, he had been in the country for 35 years illegally. And that just kind of boggles my mind in the sense of like, how is it okay that we normalize having someone live in basically kind of an underclass where kind of a shadow society? Like, I don't think that that's fair to people to put them in that situation. And so I just think that the idea, this reporter that you just mentioned, he said, Trump needs to prioritize the worst of the worst. But the problem is the system was so broken under Biden. Even Pew Research Center had mentioned that under Biden...
Well, Carrie, I think people would say the immigration reform laws in this country have potentially been broken for decades. I mean, successive Congresses have tried to pass laws and for various reasons haven't been able to. I mean, this is not a problem that just developed in this country 4, 5, 6, 7 years ago.
Well, I think the first step is to close the border, and as Trump has mentioned, all it took was the right president to do that, which President Trump has done. And so that was the first step, and then the second step is to figure out how to have a system fair and just for people who are here illegally. Okay,
we're almost out of time in this segment. I just want to let Kelly come in there as well. Kelly, you were trying to make a point.
Just make a point that there was a bipartisan bill in place to deal with immigration, but Trump nixed that deal. So I do believe that we can come together on both sides of the aisle and work together for some type of reform. And hopefully that will happen, if not soon, then as soon as possible.
Kelly, Carrie, a discussion that could go on for far longer than the time we have. Thank you very much for sharing your thoughts on that story.